Okay, well, for further analysis, we're now joined by Jonathan Fowler. He is the spokesperson for UNRWA. So, Jonathan, good to see you. Thank you for being here with us. And I think this is one of the first times that we actually speak to you since the ceasefire took effect. Now, before we come to what needs to be done, how much relief do you have right now that this ceasefire has finally taken shape?
Well, obviously the relief is immense. I mean, for our colleagues on the ground, for the rest of the population of the Gaza Strip, they've been waiting for much too long for this ceasefire. It finally provides a ray of hope, and it opens a window of opportunity, of course, for a massive scaling up of aid. And that's really what has to happen right now, because the level of humanitarian despair, the absolute desperation of the population is just enormous. I mean, on all indicators, this is an extremely severe humanitarian crisis. So that's why the joy of the ceasefire means also jumping in very quickly to scale up humanitarian operations over the coming days.
Well, let's talk about how you're trying to mobilise on the ground. And I'm going to use some of the figures that I just relayed right now. So you've got 1.8 million people displaced. They obviously need emergency shelter. You've got 18 out of 36 hospitals in Gaza are non-operational or destroyed. Primary healthcare centres are also destroyed. You've got 90% of buildings in Gaza, universities, etc., destroyed. And then obviously we're also talking about the psychological impact, especially on children, of this war. So given so much devastation and destruction, what is the plan that you're putting into place?
Well, the immediate priority is to get the basics for survival into the Gaza Strip, and already humanitarian aid has begun to flow. There've been hundreds of trucks for UNRWA, and we're being able to distribute that humanitarian aid on the ground, and hundreds of trucks from other parts of the United Nations system, all flowing into the Gaza Strip. This is exactly what we need to do. The supplies are very basic. We're talking about food, we're talking about shelter materials. We need to do everything we can to build, a basic medical system, all the things that can actually begin, to provide. It's a tiny stepping stone, but it's a stepping stone towards some kind of recovery for the Gaza Strip, which of course is going to take an incredibly long time. But right now the focus is on getting a large quantity of basic humanitarian aid in, and then the next steps will have to come as we hope the ceasefire will extend.
Indeed. So you've got a lot of hope for the extension of this ceasefire, and you've said that there's so much for you and people like you to do. But when it comes to your organisation, what would then be the impact on the ground of the Israeli ban on your organisation? And who would you then look to help?
Well, yes, this is a very important issue because, of course, UNRWA is the United Nations agency with the largest operational footprint on the ground in Gaza. Before the war, we had 13,000 staff operating in the Gaza Strip, the majority of them working in the education sector. Now, of course, formal education ceased. The population's massively displaced, our staff among them. Tragically, we've had over 265 of our staff killed, which is an unprecedented figure for UN personnel killed since the creation of the United Nations. But the next steps, on this front, we need to be able to continue operating. I mean, that's a basic fact. We are the backbone of the humanitarian operation, just by definition of numbers, really. I mean, we have around 5,000 operational staff still able to function fully in the Gaza Strip. The rest of the United Nations system to date only has a couple of hundred people, so it's a question of scale. Nobody is as positioned as UNRWA to deliver and scale up this humanitarian operation. If the ban indeed comes into force at the end of this month, and we still hope that the laws will be rescinded, but if the ban on UNRWA operations does come into force, it effectively cuts the heart out of the humanitarian operation in the Gaza Strip, and the consequences of that really do not bear thinking about, because we're looking at a very, very dark scenario in what has already been a very bleak picture for much, much too long. And where we now have this opportunity to actually do something, if we're suddenly unable to do it, that is just unconscionable.
Indeed, but does it give you any sort of hope for the future or the hope to continue your work when you hear from, I don't know, people like the European Commissioner for Equality, Hadja Lahib, who has urged the international community to ensure that your organisation can continue doing its work, and if not, how they can support you going forward?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if we didn't have hope to hold on to, we would have nothing. The point is that there is very strong support for our agency from leading figures, as you've mentioned, the European Commissioner, others, repeated reaffirmation of our mandate from the UN General Assembly. All of these things which really underscore the fact that it's utterly unacceptable that a United Nations member state could even consider, let alone action, a plan to stop us from being able to do our work. I mean, this goes much beyond UNRWA. It's the potential unraveling of the multilateral system as we know it, which is not a perfect system, but it's the best system that we've got. So we're in a situation where, yes, vocal calls to allow us to maintain our work are extremely important, and we really need to go down to the wire on this, because everything needs to be done to ensure that these laws are not implemented and that they be dropped. That's absolutely critical.
Well, listen, Jonathan, we wish you the best of luck with it all. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on the programme. That was Jonathan Fowler, the UNRWA spokesperson.